everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities Podcast. My name's Stu Turley, Energy Newsbeat podcast host, and I've got two fantastic panelists today. I mean, not just regular panelists. I mean, I've got some gigantic voices in the energy industry. I've got Dr. Tammy Nemeth over in the UK. How are you today, Almighty One?
I am doing well. How are you all doing?
Doing fantastic. I'll tell you
Beautiful
what, you
day.
can't buy the kind of entertainment that we're going to have today, but I'm buckle up. We're going to have some serious fun. And then we have not just a guy imitating David Blackman. We actually have the David Blackman, who is an outstanding Forbes Daily Caller and Energy Absurdities on X and the Energy Additions podcast. How are you, Almighty One?
Oh, I'm just thrilled to death to be alive on this glorious day in the United States of America and Texas. So nothing could be better.
If I wanted an autograph from Eeyore, I will buy you dinner.
Being serious, man. Come on.
Come on.
Great day.
Come on, man.
You get to be my age, every day you get out of bed is a great day.
That's right.
Absolutely. And we're going to have some serious fun because around the world right now, there is two really gigantic big questions going on in oil and gas and everything else. And then we're going to layer that in with issues around the UK, Canada, and trade and tariffs and everything else. But we've got diesel crack spreads going on around the world, that there is a shortage in the refinery space around the world. And this is going to be a gigantic problem. And I'll tell you what, also, Dr. Nemeth, I can't wait if we could potentially get Catherine Porter and the other young lady that we've got a note to would be an outstanding podcast as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we can make it work at the beginning of September there once Catherine's back from holiday. She had a really great piece in the Daily Mail this morning about the UK grid and just the possibility of breakdown, which we're nudging ever closer to, especially, I think it was back in May or something, maybe a bit earlier, the National Energy Electricity System Operator, NESO, they put forward a plan to stop all the inertial spinning on the grid or something. They're going to replace it with flywheels. I don't know exactly. The plan isn't clear. It's not sure how they want to execute it. She submitted something 6 months ago saying, "What the heck are y'all doing?" And then today she had an article just laying out, what happens when the inertia fails. You get a grid collapse like dominoes, like what happened in Spain and Portugal last year. And there's a lot of whistleblowers coming forward saying, "Look, guys, we don't really know what's happening with this stuff. The leaders aren't listening to us. The engineers are making statements internally like this can't continue. We need to protect things." And in her article today, which I sent around to you fellows this morning, she was talking about how this week, like last week, the entire balancing software, which is from the 1980s on the British grid, it failed. And the engineers were forced to use spreadsheets and telephone instructions to hundreds of power stations just to keep the grid running. And okay, maybe 1980 software, maybe if it was written well, that'd be okay. But there's all this new stuff coming onto the grid that needs balancing. The wind is fluctuating all the time. The solar, she goes into some depth about the problems with solar on the UK grid. And just the inability to balance it all. And my concern, though, is that this becomes an argument for we need AI to be monitoring everything. We need to roll out better smart meters everywhere so we can keep tabs every millisecond and control people for when the things get unbalanced, which is happening often because of a lot of different things, a lot of policy decisions. And so, is the UK concerned about energy security? I don't think so, but they keep talking like they are, but the rhetoric doesn't match the reality. And I think this is what's so great about our podcast, the Energy Realities podcast, is that we call out the empty rhetoric and say, okay, this is the reality, and this is sort of what needs to happen. And I'm glad we have an opportunity to do that every week.
So the UK grid is a 50 hertz grid that relies on inertia, natural gas for 40% natural gas, and you're killing the North Sea natural gas for your own deployment. So you get to buy natural gas. And then Ed Miliband over the weekend wanted to extend 200 wind farms to deep sea wind farms. Do you know how expensive that is in maintenance?
I know. Yeah.
The
And the cost, right? So in the last, they have these auctions for electricity access to the grid or whatever. And this proposal for these floating deep sea offshore wind turbines, which is insane, got the highest price ever. So not only is it going to be difficult to connect to the mainland, to where the demand is, it's going to be incredibly expensive. And it's not like those, where does that, who pays? The ratepayers pay. And it's always like, oh, well, they got the highest thing. Well, that's not a good thing. It's not good to be charging in the hundreds of pounds for a kilowatt hour. It's insane. It's insane.
I'll tell you, I had fun after I saw that one on Yahoo, and then you sent it around to the gang, and then I wrote an article on it, and I absolutely had a lot of fun. Let me bring to the stage the infographic here. This is on energynewsbeat.co. You take a look at the array cost, 1 to 3 million per kilometer, and you take a look at how many cables. 300 to 400 total length. I mean, we're talking cables out the wazoo is a technical term, and it is absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
The cost for offshore maintenance of this disaster is unbelievable. So you've got the cost per kilowatt that Ed Miliband, and then you get to pay for, wait for it, Dr. Nemeth, natural gas to back it up. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, they could have nuclear to back it up, but it takes so long to build anything, and that Hinkley Point is still under construction. I mean, it'll be great once it's up and running, but the possibility of having more nuclear on the grid, the timelines are so insane. And unless, they get their act together to build a little quicker, it's not gonna happen.
As Aslan Pilot Car also points out, Irina wrote today that Norway is exerting themselves on gas exploration and restarting wells by shutting down the EU. They are moving into, and they're just taking things matter into their own hand and actually going into the Arctic, and as well they should. So I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's that. For Norway, that makes all kinds of sense. I mean, For too long, EU member countries have ceded their energy priorities to the central government, and the central government keeps screwing them. And Norway's kind of tired of that, apparently, and that's a good thing. It's a positive sign for the EU, I think, that maybe these member countries will start pushing back on some of the worst excesses coming out of Brussels.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck.
Because what's interesting, and I just want to point this out, is that a bunch of the institutional investors from Norway were begging the EU to maintain the Arctic ban. So talk about shooting yourself in the foot. So here's Norway that provides the natural gas and the oil in a significant quantity as a reliable supplier to the EU and the UK. And the institutional investors make a lot of money from it. And now they're appealing to the EU to prevent Norway from developing the Arctic. I mean, it boggles the mind.
So much of what we're talking about right now, this is a great object lesson, because so much of what's been discussed so far is a classic example of left-wing politics in the Western world. You come into power, you invoke all these policies that intentionally create a problem. What's the problem? Energy costs are too high. Energy is becoming scarce, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of the policies that these left-wing politicians have put in place in Brussels and Germany and England and France. just name the country in Europe and in the United States, in California and all the blue states in the United States, where electricity costs are 50% higher in blue states than they are in red states, and gasoline costs are 50% higher in blue states than they are in red states. And so it's all policy related. And then so they create the problem, and then what do? They point the finger at some boogeyman, which is big oil or climate change, or in the United States it's Donald Trump. And then they say, well, we're going to fix the problem that those boogeymen have created with a bunch of new policies that are going to make the problems worse. Okay. And it's very predictable. And the flywheels are going to replace energy inertia on the power grid. Come on, give me a break. This is just ludicrous. But it's all just such a clear example of how public policy drives these energy scarcity issues and high energy cost issues. And until we change our voting habits in the Western world, this madness is going to continue. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse. It's all very predictable. And so what's going to have to take place at some point is the people waking up that they're really causing the problem, because they have elections and they get to vote on who gets to do the rules, and they're voting for the wrong people. And that's, anyway, everybody knows that.
I want to add in here with the Norway thing, and I'm so glad that Aslan Pilekar brought that up, because Irina's Substack was really amazing on that this morning. But I love this quote from the I think it's the energy minister of the CEO. I know, I'm not sure. Anyway, a guy from Norway. I think he's the energy minister. He said, look, we're going to develop these areas regardless, and then it will be up to the EU whether they should have a moratorium on buying that gas or oil. So they're going to produce it. And it's like, fine, you can't stop us from producing it. You want to have this moratorium, whatever, but you can put a moratorium on buying it, because it's going to go onto the world market.
Yeah.
Good for them. That's great.
I think it's about time. and that's the way it should be. And it's like Africa should develop Africa resources so they can help get everybody electricity, low cost energy. They have all the natural resources. Let Africa, don't sell them and finance them only wind turbines and solar panels. Help them develop other sources of energy so they can be a trading partner, and it would be a different world.
Yeah.
Personal opinion. Hey, but let's also take a look at diesel crack spreads. That's hitting the headline gigantically right now. And diesel is I think in the United States, it's going to be the inflationary measure that Trump can't hide, because diesel is about to go up a bunch. Diesel crack spreads in Asia just went over $70. In the US, it just went over $100.
Wow.
Those are the highest in history. How that also impacts the US is, wait for it, California imports from Asia. So we've got a problem now in the EU and the UK. Diesel's going to be a problem because Russia just turned to a importer from India, and the only India refinery group, India is the swing trader in the whole thing. Russia, I did not have this on my bingo card till last week, and it's now Russia is selling oil to India and then buying diesel back. That's great for the environment.
Yeah.
Sure it is. Yeah. It's wonderful it may be, it could be good for the environment. It depends on, the difference between emissions and pollution standards in India compared to Russian refineries, right? You might be eliminating some pollution by shipping that all over to India to be refined and then sold back to Russia. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. Excuse me. By the way, President Trump could be about to have, where diesel's concerned, a big problem, because the highest ever recorded average price in the United States for a gallon of diesel happened under Joe Biden on June 19th, 2022, $5.82 a gallon. The current average price per diesel as of this morning, according to AAA, $5.61. So we're just 20 cents away from the highest ever recorded average price for a gallon of diesel in the U.S.
Yeah.
Nowhere near the highest price for gasoline, but we're still a dollar below Joe Biden's highs on gasoline. But on diesel, we're right there.
And guess what diesel provides?
Well, transportation for everything.
Yeah. All the
All
trucks.
consumer goods.
Yeah.
So it
Trains.
is. It's one of the biggest inflationary features that
Yeah.
you can have out there right now. So
Yeah. I mean, if you eliminated the blowout in diesel prices that we've seen this year, we would probably have 0% inflation in the United States this year. It's all
Yeah.
diesel.
Yep. Let's get to Prime Minister Carney. I've got a few things. I got some questions for you guys on Carney. Dr. Nemeth, I'll start with you on what you think's going on with it. Sorry to drop this ugly baby on your doorstep, but what do you think's going on with the tariff discussions, or as we had? I saw that one, the terrorist. Let's take a look at that comment again. Maybe we should. This is from Rodney. Love Rodney. Stu mentioned tariffs. Maybe we should call them tariffs. It strikes fear in the industries and consumers and generates uncertainties. What it does, Rodney, that's a funny comment, but what it does generate is we have got the largest increase in manufacturing in the United States in decades. We have more. Mercedes-Benz just announced a new factory coming into Atlanta to avoid the tariffs. So, but let's go over here. And what do you think is going on with your buddy over there as a prime minister?
Well, I think we're in a fog of war situation right now where both sides are claiming whatever, and we won't really know what the truth or reality is for a little while yet.
Yeah.
And so everyone's been speculating. Rumors and predictions and speculations have been rife across social media about what really happened or whatever. And I would just like to point out to listeners that for 8.5 months, Canadian negotiators were not negotiating. They weren't in Washington. Nothing was happening. And then in the last week or 10 days, suddenly they showed up to the table. And all of the Global News last night, someone sent me, they had a big graphic showing all the demands America made. And it's everything they've been saying for the past 18 months. So it's like, okay, none of this is shocking. A lot of them, I would say, of the 12 or 13 points they had, over half of them had to deal with China and about the dumping. And someone here made a statement about China will build the green build out with coal and all this kind of stuff. But with that coal, they're also producing a whole lot of steel, a whole lot of aluminum that they dump onto the world market. And
Yep.
one of the problems that I've heard from different people, I don't know how true it is, so take this with a grain of salt, but some people in Canada said that the auto manufacturers and the other manufacturers cannot guarantee that the steel and aluminum they're using to make their products and send on to the United States are not from China. They can't prove it. And one of the things that Trump is asking is that prove where this steel and aluminum is coming from. If it's coming from you, Canada, no problem. But if it's coming from China and you're snow washing it or whatever to say, oh, no, really, it's Canadian, that's a problem. And the fact that they can't prove it. Then there's the other thing about forced labor and human rights stuff. So if you're importing a bunch of components that have been made in China, or from some other jurisdiction, and you're not tracking what the human rights thing is, and Canada has a law for that, so I'm confused why they're not following it. Then that's a problem too. But so if they don't have that chain, then that's a problem. So someone said Chris from Alberta says that Canada has a subsidized media that says everything the liberals want out there and leaves out the necessary facts. Absolutely. Because people are sending me stuff that the Canadian media is saying. And I'm like, well, what's the context for that? what is really behind X, Y, and Z? Because you're only getting this little narrow bit of a narrative in order to say elbows up. And one of the other things I would point out is that on August 31st, Canada is having 3 by-elections, 3, that will make or break Carney's majority. It could add to it, could take away from it. So I would not put it past Mark Carney to say, oh, look how tough I am. I'm fighting Trump. We're so great. Elbows up. And then he wins those by-elections. So because he's not doing anything retaliatory until September 8th or something. So why the delay, right? Why?
When are the by-elections?
August 31st.
Okay, next Sunday. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's another 3 coming up. So is he deliberately doing this to affect the outcome of the by-election, because he hasn't actually done anything? He's made all of these announcements. He's talked lots of rhetoric. I've been reading this book on Enron, and it just strikes me because Enron was all about making a deal and never following through, just so
Yeah.
they could have all this money on their thing. And I feel like that's what Carney's doing, because he goes on and on and on. I've made this MOU and this deal and this and blah, blah, blah. And nothing happens.
So he's the smartest guy in the room too, huh?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's the book I'm reading.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Great book.
Well, David, if we sit back and take a look at this as this rolls out across the world, everybody is sitting there focused on, oh, wait, the oil. I think oil prices are going to go down. I don't think we're going to spike to 200, because there's only 2 ways that diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel are actually going to go down. And that is to either A, build more refineries. Let me get on my toolkit and my welding kit, my thing, and start building one. And in about 30 years, we'll have one. Or demand destruction. At these prices, demand destruction starts kicking in.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But well, it's, yes, to some extent, but not to a huge extent, because when you really look at where prices are for gas in the United States, I'm not talking about other countries, but when you look at where they are in the United States, price for gasoline is really not outside of the range where it's been this entire century. When you adjust everything for the rate of inflation and cost of living, what we're paying today for gasoline, $4.06 a gallon on average, is, equal to about $2.30 in 2001 dollars. So and I mean, that was not an unusually high price in 2001. In fact, there were plenty of times early in this century we'd have loved to have prices that low. So yeah, I mean, it's higher than it was a year ago, but that's largely because President Trump and his policies were so successful in bringing the prices down to begin with before this damn war started.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to see a lot of demand destruction, certainly not in the United States. We're probably seeing some in Africa and Asia that could become permanent if this thing keeps lingering and these prices remain elevated. But if prices go down soon, I think demand's just going to come roaring back, and we're going to have an undersupplied market again for a while. So I just think gasoline demand and oil demand is very resilient across the world as long as the economy doesn't crash. Now, if the economy crashes, all bets are off. But
yeah,
we're not there yet, and we're really not, I don't think, close to it. So
let me ask this. When is the Alberta referendum on independence? It's coming up in November. Is that right?
October 19th.
October 19th. Thank you. Close enough for me, since I can't remember half my life. Let's go over here to,
hey, wait, before you use that topic.
No.
That referendum is not a final answer, right, Tammy?
No.
Tammy's explained this before. This is a very complicated process.
It's
in the early stages of.
Yeah, it's they're voting to say whether or not they want to have a vote on independence.
Yeah.
So if people agree, yes, we should have a vote on independence, then they have to do consultations, I guess. I don't know. some stupid court said that if you're even just going to think about it, you have to consult with Indigenous people. So it's the question is whether or not they should have a question, is what it comes down to.
Yeah. But
And
anyway,
then,
it's a big deal.
yeah,
I'm not saying it's
yeah,
not a big deal, but it's
yeah,
the first step in a lot of steps. Anyway, go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Nemeth. I have got to find that video of the indigenous people and the signs on the subway that they had is the funniest
Yeah.
video I have ever seen in my life. We want to have indigenous signs of turtles for signs. And I mean, I
yeah.
busted laughing over that. We're gonna just ruin our listeners' day by playing that video someday. But anyway, let me ask this question of you, Dr. Nemeth. The Canadian pipeline, if you look at the, for our podcast listeners, I've got the Canadian pipeline maps up. And I found it very interesting as I'm trying to figure out what is actually happening between Premier Carney and President Trump. And they look at Enbridge Line, the Energy East was canceled. This would have changed Canada permanently to no longer being reliant on the U.S. for energy in many areas. It would have changed the game. This was really dumb.
Yeah, I know. And one of the lead people against who fomented opposition to it was Stephen Guilbeault, who was Canada's environment minister for a long time and supported and brought in all those different climate policies and whatnot. So these are the ones, the dotted ones were proposed and canceled or whatever. This is an older map, and so it shows the Trans Mountain expansion. That one's finished now, and it's reached capacity pretty much, which is
Right.
why they're now going to build a third one on that same route. That's
Isn't
the
that great?
proposal. Because this other one, Northern Gateway, that's what the one that Alberta wanted, that would go to that more northern port, because there is quite a lot of congestion in the south there by Vancouver, and that it just would have been a better spot for it. But the BC government and the federal government just handed over those islands over there to the Indigenous people. And they said, no, we don't want it. And then we also have a ban on oil tankers in that area, Bill C-48, that Carney refuses to repeal. So he's like, oh, well, it's okay. We'll talk about it. And I can always grant an exemption. Well, why not just repeal the legislation if it's a problem? Right? No, we're just going to have an exemption if I think it's a good idea. But they decided to go with the southern one instead. And then there's Keystone XL, and this is what people got worked up about when Trump tweeted last week. Oh, we have a deal. Maybe we're really close, and I'll resurrect Keystone. Well, that you can't really, because there's this other one, the South Bow project, which is similar to Keystone, but they're
But
following
not the same. Yeah.
not the same. It's a different route in the United States that would bypass a lot of the opposition that had been put forward because of where it was crossing different aquifers and all that sort of stuff. So, but the other thing was about a month ago, the province of Alberta and Ontario signed a memorandum of understanding saying they want to build a pipeline almost where Energy East was going, except it would just end in Sarnia, Ontario, instead of going all the way to the East Coast. And what the plan was, they would build this pipeline. They would create an actual physical strategic petroleum reserve around the city of Sarnia in Ontario, and um, they have a memorandum of understanding for it. I don't know if this is going to go forward as one of the major projects to be, get the stamp of approval from Ottawa. But they're now looking for a proponent who will do it. Just because there's also the issue, if you want to talk about energy security, you have the Supreme Court of Michigan said that they should shut down Line 5 or not fix it or whatever that goes through the Great Lakes there, which when on your map there, it showed that little bit that goes under the Great Lakes, and that's the major oil pipeline from Canada. The Enbridge main line there is what feeds Ontario, and it goes through the United States. So it's like, what are you guys doing making all these threats? Now Michigan is saying we want to shut down that part of the pipeline, which is like stupid. That's, what how Canada gets its oil. And so therefore the alternative is to build this other oil one through the Canadian Shield, which is through Ontario. And they built a natural gas pipeline in the 1950s that went through the Canadian Shield, and it was really difficult. There's a lot of blasting, it's really tough terrain. Yeah, we can do it, but the environmentalists are going to go snaky.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is it possible? Not sure.
I'll tell you what, this is a really complex question because you got New York City sitting right over on New York City. They spent $3 billion to put the electric. I think it was 3 billion, somewhere around there. What's a few billion between
What's a few
friends?
billion?
What's a
And
billion?
and they connected to the Canadian Hydro, and so you're going to have a premier up in Canada sitting there, kind of going, "Hey, I'm at war with you guys." Now you got New York City going, "Holy cow, Batman! No electricity for you." Speaking of this soup Nazi, holy smokes, this could be the electricity Nazi and out of a Seinfeld commercial.
Right.
Episode.
Well, what's interesting is that Carney flew over to Newfoundland last week and made a huge deal about the expansion of Churchill Falls, which is this really big hydro plant, and how they're going to expand it by, I think, upwards of 50% or something like that. But then a portion of that electricity would be going to the United States. And one of the things that they put forward on Global News last night was that, oh, America wants some security on energy, that they're not going to be price gouged, that Canada's not going to cut it off. Well, no kidding. Why wouldn't they ask for that, given what Doug Ford's been saying? We're going to shut off the switch and so on. So it's like, there's actions have consequences when
Yeah.
you make those kinds of statements in a threatening manner, which Ontario really doesn't have the right to do so. But they're doing it anyway, and they're getting approval from the feds to do it. I'd be concerned if I was an American. How can you trust they're not going to shut the switch off?
Well, but to be fair, that works both ways, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like
for
our
sure.
government has been quiet and silent on things, and Donald Trump is not Calvin Coolidge. He says what's on his mind too, and so a lot of the problem between the two countries right now is all the damn rhetoric from both sides, and it's not all the problem, but it's a part of it, and but that's just how Trump and Carney operate, and they both have their own political interests complicating all that stuff.
For sure.
I think there's some underlying issues between the two leaders of the country. I think the people of most of the people of Canada and the U.S. want to trade with each other.
Yeah.
I love our Snow Texans up. I mean, it's just way cool. I don't like the rhetoric going on between Texas. I mean, I think of Texas as being the only state, but I think it's the rhetoric is not good. On the other hand, $60 billion is nothing to sneeze at of metal that has been dumped into Canada to come across our border. President Trump is right, and he is trying to defend the United States. Now, is President Trump right all the time? No. Is our Congress absolutely the most despicable institution in the history of mankind? Yes. So, I am.
I don't know. Wait a minute. The EU's still there in Brussels. Come on, man.
Yeah. Come on.
All right. It's a close second. I'm going to say it's a close second. It's anyway. I'm losing faith in them.
Yeah.
I would add with the Canadian situation, what concerns me is the type of rhetoric that's coming out. There's always been this anti-Americanism in in Canada for forever, since Canada was founded. But it's mirroring what was said in the 60s and 70s and early 80s when Canada negotiated the first free trade agreement, the Canada-US free trade agreement. And it's the same arguments. America is a bully. we're going to be treated unfairly. America only looks out for itself. Canada's going to get, overrun by all this stuff. And what's interesting is how, if you look at the economic data, small, medium enterprises exploded after the free trade agreement. It allowed them to access those economies of scale in the United States, which Canada we're just that much smaller. And so they got access to that market. There was a harmonization of the rules and whatnot, which made it much easier to produce and export things and whatnot. And then that rhetoric kind of went quiet for a little while, and it kind of switched to the it flares up when it's not a Democrat in power. And I say that because a sitting Liberal MP last week campaigned in Florida for Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah.
What the heck? Now, can you imagine if a Republican Congress member came up to Canada and was campaigning for a conservative leader?
Oh.
People would lose their minds.
It'd be a scandal of epic proportions, yes.
For sure. So, and he was bragging about it on Instagram, taking selfies with her. Look, I'm going door to door. She should be the candidate, and so on and so forth. A sitting Liberal MP in Canada campaigning in America. And that happened also in the 2024 election. There was a contingent of 10, at least 10 Canadian policymakers who went down to the United States and campaigned on behalf of the Democrats. That's crazy. So there's anti-Americanism, but it only seems to extend when it's Republicans. When Democrats are in power, suddenly everybody gets along. And
it's the same double standard we have in our country, on that same issue. And I want to expand on one thing Stu and Rodney McInnes have emphasized here, that the people of Canada and the United States want to trade with each other.
Exactly.
Want is not strong enough. They have to. Okay. Where energy is concerned, we have to. We don't have really a choice. Eastern part of Canada needs that oil coming through those pipelines to go through the United States. They have to have it. Our refineries along the Texas Gulf Coast and Louisiana Gulf Coast have to have that heavy crude coming down from Canada. And it's almost, it's upwards of 5 million barrels a day. We don't have ready alternatives to that heavy crude coming into those refineries. Now, potentially over time, you could find alternatives, but you can't snap your finger and say, I'm going to replace 4 to 5 million barrels of Canadian crude with stuff coming. Well, there's not enough coming from Venezuela and South America to replace it all. And so these refineries are tooled specifically to use that Canadian crude to blend with other grades of crude to create the refining streams that enable them to create all these refined products that they create every day. Yeah. You cut off those pipelines from Canada, and we got a real economic catastrophe in the United States. That hasn't been brought up in these trade negotiations, but when I saw Saturday Mark Carney saying we're at war with the United States over trade, that's the first thing that popped into my head just because of my own orientation. So that's a potential weapon there that he hasn't deployed yet, but certainly could if things continue to deteriorate.
I just saw a video of him bragging that he's about to, and that is the dumbest man I've ever seen next to Ed
Miliband.
Doing
that, that's not smart. Yeah.
Can you send me a link to that video? Are you sure it's real?
Yeah, it was him. It was him. But let me also ask this. We're witnessing something that is absolutely mind-boggling to me, the self-intentional deindustrialization through energy policies.
Yeah.
And that deindustrialization is critical. And it goes right along to that. And to our podcast listeners, I'm adding to the stage. Sinclair posted a thing out of Tulsa. The Dyno is their Sinclair closes its only lubricant refinery. This means that all of Canada is now going to have to import all of their lubricants, all of their hydraulic fluids, everything else. This was it. This was their only plant. There's a couple hundred people that are going to lose it, and Dino was not losing money, but it's better to go away than it is to deal with Carney, and that's really sad.
That really is quite a statement, isn't it? Holy smokes!
It's the same thing with the Venezuelan situation. We have a California oil company leaving California, and they're going to go work in Venezuela. I'm writing an article on it now. It's better to go work with Venezuela than California. Let that one sink in on you.
Well, and why are they doing it? Because they're tired of dealing with communists who run California. So they're going to Venezuela because you don't have to deal with communists there anymore. I mean, think about that.
I know. Isn't that scary?
Yeah. But that's what it is, folks. I mean, it just really is. I'm sorry.
So the deindustrialization follows in the United States, Dr. Nemeth, that we average 38% higher in blue states. And most of that is regulatory overreach and burden.
Yeah.
And that's happening across the world. We are just stupid.
We are stupid.
Well, and America's not even the worst one. I think America is the best out of the lot, which is like, what does that say about Western civilization?
Yeah, that's a scary thing to me because, man, I'm frustrated every day with how bad it is with our government.
Yeah.
But it's mainly state governments like California and all the blue states with their renewable portfolio standards and the cost increases that inevitably involved. I'm writing a piece right now that hopefully will be published at Forbes this week about why these policies in blue states, why the higher energy costs in blue states than red states is not an accident. It's not a glitch in their political system. It's the strategy. It's intentional.
Yeah, it's by design.
It's by design to increase the cost of energy of all kinds to force people to consume less because, there's a marginal price at which everybody stops increasing their consumption. And so the whole goal of the climate alarm movement is to increase those prices to that point.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's and it's less severe in the United States than any other Western country, which is really frightening.
Yeah.
Oh, I
wonder
this
how
last
many
one from Asland. I'm sorry, Tammy. The California communists are led by the Getty clan. That's right. The former oil man's family, his descendants. The New York ones are led by the Rockefellers, the descendants of John D. Rockefeller. Absolutely 100% true.
Yeah. But I would add that all of those cities that are implementing these terrible rules, which are in conjunction with the blue states, those cities are part of the C40 group. And that was originally created by Mike Bloomberg in order to introduce these very strict climate rules at the civic level. And I think it's also something that was promoted in Catherine McKenna's Integrity Matters UN report, where her group was arguing that you can't necessarily change what the nation is doing. You have to start it at the community level because there's zoning, there's all of these kind of local environmental regulations there where you can choke off oil and gas development. And whether it's pipelines, whether it's housing, no more natural gas allowed in the apartment buildings and so on. And that the best way to attack this is from multiple angles, not just the nation, but you have to go over to the cities, the local counties, the states, and also the nation. And so they've been working very slowly with these cities to do this. And now we're starting to see what that payoff is.
Yep. Absolutely true. And it's I don't know where it all ends, Stu. Where does it all end, man?
I'm trying to remain positive that the world is healing, but the number one problem I see in the US is that people are not ready. I just wrote an article yesterday that there were potentially a guy several years ago said that there may be 18 months. There are 9 major critical interconnects in the United States. And if those 9 were taken out, most of the US grid would be gone for about 18 months. And with the transformers taking years,
Yeah.
There's only 9 major interconnects in the United States. And if you take those out, you take the US down. And that's pretty small.
There was an article on Substack, I forget who it was, but he was talking about how the type of steel made in the US cannot be used for the big pylons and for electricity distribution. And
Huh.
there's only one plant, I think it's in Pittsburgh, that makes that kind of steel, but they don't produce enough. And that this is one of those supply chain nodes that is kind of crucial.
Yikes.
And yeah, so it's like all of these different aspects, right? Like you mentioned, Stu, with the transformers, whether it's that or the natural gas turbines, where there's like this huge backlog. Um, so I'm glad that there's an uptick in the United States, building out those factories, rehoming them, reshoring, whatever whatever term you want to use. But when the America is the only one doing it, then that's a problem, because all
Yeah.
these other countries are also there'll be demand and whatnot, and they need to be doing it too, but they're not. And I
Well,
think this is Trump's frustration, where he's like, guys, come on, you got to build up your military. You should be looking out for these other things. And instead they want to, you know, criticize Trump for pointing out the obvious.
yeah, but in all these countries we're talking about, so many of their public officials are in the pockets of the Chinese government now. The Chinese government's been incredibly smart in how they've stealthily gone around and influenced politicians in every country, including the United States Congress, which probably a third of our members of Congress are in the pockets of China too now. Which is why Trump is so hated in Washington, D.C. We see these outgoing senators now from the Republican Party just behaving like petulant children about it all. And if you could probably audit some of them, you'd probably find a lot of Chinese money in their bank accounts. So it's a real insidious issue impacting all of us. And in the United States, is the Trump administration, without help from Congress, even though he had Republican majorities, has made a lot of progress in reshoring supply chains for critical minerals. Already in just a year and a half, a lot of progress, and the Pentagon has been part of that. Energy
Yeah.
departments played a major role. But some of that it has to do with this alliance we've made with Australia. And I don't think we can trust the Australian government as far as we can throw them right now.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're heavily influenced by China and intimidated by China right now. So you wonder how long that alliance is really going to produce any positive results for the United States in terms of freeing supply chains from China for some of these minerals. And so it's a highly complex thing. You almost have to simply bring it all home, reshore it instead of friendshoring it,
Yeah.
to have any confidence that it's going to work for the long term.
Friendshoring doesn't work. Just ask New York City when they cut off the electricity. I want to ask a real question. Rodney McGinnis.
Well, what have you been your last ones? They're not real.
let me take a moment and be serious.
After all these fake
I might.
questions, let's ask a real one.
Really?
Let me ask a real question. And Rodney McGinnis, love Rodney. Carney's elbow up dance, twisting back and forth. If you've ever seen, starting to remind me of doing the damage of a moose in China shop, as the expression goes. Mooses are animals, man. No, those dudes are dangerous. They kill more people in Alaska. Love all
And
my
they're
trips to
gigantic.
Alaska, but mooses are dangerous. And Rodney just cracks me up with that. But the real question is, Where did the elbows dance at? Is Carney actually going to be really glad that he came up with this, or is this something that's
Oh
going
my
to stick
gosh, you
around?
have no idea how popular that was among certain people in
Sure,
Canada.
of
It's the
course.
dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I
There's
know.
about,
I felt like they're doing the chicken dance, which I
oh
hate
Yeah.
the chicken
yeah, I
dance.
feel like I'm doing the Gavin dance.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Okay, let's do the Gavin elbow up dance. Okay, that was dumb. Okay.
I want to comment though about Australia and China because I think it ties into last week's podcast with Joseph Fournier because he was talking about how at the rate that China is using up their coal um, with gasification and all of these different things, there's a likelihood they'll run out of their reserves quicker than people anticipate, and therefore they could be making a move to take over or dominate even more jurisdictions to secure that their
Yeah.
external supply, whether it's Indonesia or Australia, he suggests in his
Hmm.
reports. So for people who missed last week, I suggest checking out Joseph Fournier's Substack, read his 2 papers on China. He crunched the numbers. I'd be concerned. I'd like to see what other people have, if they've looked at it and if they came up with similar calculations. But um, that's a very real possibility. What if Taiwan is just a head fake? And then China moves on to Indonesia or someone, a place, a jurisdiction that has more resources they need.
Dr. Nemeth, let me ask this question. If the allegations of elbows up has actually sold out to China, what do you think the crown has sold out to China?
You mean the UK crown?
Yes, because that would be Australia.
I know.
Just thought I'd point that
There's
out.
been there's this whole train of thought within the UK that they certain people like Mandelson and whatever, and certain groups had been bought out by China. And one of the groups that is often discussed, Mark Carney was a member of when he was here as the governor of Bank of England. But even before he became prime minister, I think it was the year before, I think it was 2024 in September, he was at this really big meeting in China where they were talking about different things. And it was quite concerning to hear how he was talking when he was representing Brookfield Asset Management. And some of the key people in Canada behind him have very strong ties to China. Helped build the Three Gorges Dam and have opened up. Like I remember in the 90s with Jean Chrétien, when he was Liberal leader, they did these Team Canada trade missions to China where they loaded up a bunch of Canadian businessmen and went over there. And that was in the 90s, late 90s, before, Xi and everything. So I don't know. Canada has some pretty strong ties with China, and they're not all good, I guess is how I would say it. Plus
Well,
the Chinese police stations in Canada don't help either.
well, we have Chinese police stations in New York City. We came about this close in the United States, in 2024, to electing a man to our vice president's office who made 34 mystery trips to China during the 1990s alone.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but again, I keep coming back to the fact that we think it's better in the United States and that we're somehow immune to all this. We're not. We're heavily compromised and getting worse every day in this regard. And Australia would be a fine source of coal for China. But
Yeah.
China is also making these aggressive inroads into Canada and the United States, where the largest reserves of coal on the face of the earth reside.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
yeah. I mean, there's a big motivator for them to be doing this in the United States and Canada.
Yeah, China's been active in Africa for a long time. I would say at least since 2011, 12, definitely after 2015 with the Belt and Road Initiative, building all kinds of railroads and ports and various infrastructure developments in order to get the minerals out that they want and exploit, right? And
Yeah.
when I was teaching in Germany, we had a conversation in the class about is China behaving like Britain as an imperial power? Because they end up bringing in military and whatnot there because they're people that are working are feeling under threat. This is the same thing that Britain did. And if you compare how Britain ended up growing its empire, which first started with these commercial type enterprises, China seems to be following in a similar footsteps. Um, so, yeah, I'd be worried if I lived in Africa as
Yeah.
much as over here in the UK and Canada.
And of course, Congo is where all the cobalt is too. You know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of natural resources in addition to coal in Congo and throughout Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, Charles is a wind turbine operator. Absolutely. He makes a great deal off of the apparently he donates it all or something. I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
he does. Of course he does.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Carney was very careful when he had his meeting in China back in January, February, where he talked about there being a new world order. And he's been following through on that by alienating the United States. And
He
Yeah.
slowed down his speech and was very deliberate when he says, "We are starting a
New
new
world.
world order." I thought he was going to lean in and do his best Biden imitation, but it actually, he was trying to sound cool, and it was pretty dumb.
I think it was for the translator.
Right.
Benefit of the doubt. But it was funny because the premier of Saskatchewan was sitting beside him. And if you watch him, at first he's kind of nodding along. Yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then when Carney said New World Order, he like does a double take, like, what? What did he just say? And I'm sitting here.
Wait,
and,
what? Get me out of the camera.
Wait, what? Yeah, this is bad.
Yeah.
But-
That was a Scooby moment. I remember that. And I was like, no, this was actually a lot of fun today. And Dr. Nemeth, what are your thoughts on what's coming around the corner for the Nemeth report?
Oh, I'm working on a piece about stewardship and what that means for resource development, because I think the environmental movement has taken that term to mean something that it isn't. Because in their
Nice.
view, stewardship means no development at all. But then I push back on some of I've heard some oil and gas people talk about stewardship, and I don't think they really know what it means. I think they just say it because it sounds good. So I want to put out there what I think it ought to be, and hopefully people will read it and go, yeah, it should be like that.
Cool.
Sounds
I like
good.
that. That is great. But you know, the thing that really makes me kind of irritated about that stewardship is that Canadian regulatory burden. If you get rid of the CBAM and all the other stuff, you know, the carbon border mechanisms and everything else is absolute. They don't need any of that crap. And you take a look at it, they do a great job in the cleanest delivery of fossil fuels anywhere on the planet. Canada, hats off to you. You do a great job. Get rid of the regulatory burden and keep doing a great job.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have the industrial carbon tax that's on oil and gas production, and then they want to force carbon capture storage in order to justify the new pipeline. So and part of the new taxonomy thing, you wouldn't be able to build anything new. You wouldn't be able to expand production. You'd only be able to apply it to current production and phase it out.
And guess what happens? Price goes through the roof. You can't farm, everything dies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Blackman, what are you working on for Forbes or the Daily Caller or for your Substack?
Well, I'm looking forward to Scott Bessent's press conference later today to see what actions they're going to take in terms of more sanctions on Iran's government in light of the, I think now general consensus that there is a southern route through the Strait of Hormuz in which a lot of oil has been escaping in recent weeks. Secretary Wright was the first to point that out last Monday. And since then, I think everybody's now realizing he wasn't just making things up, which I don't know why anybody would have assumed that to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's interesting. And, you know, just trying to keep my head above water otherwise.
Secretary Chris Wright is actually one of the greatest men on the planet. I'll just say that. And when somebody asked me, why would he lie about it? And I'm saying that man is incapable of lying. I'll just simply say,
I agree.
Period. He is the greatest secretary we've ever had in energy.
Certainly
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I mean, you take a look at Secretary Chris Wright versus Ed Miliband, and
He's not the
wow.
Jennifer
secretary
Granholm.
anymore.
No, he's
He's not
not.
the
He's the
secretary.
Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and you can sit back and take a look at that. He's having a foreign affair.
Oh, God, Stu.
Well, no,
Stu,
honestly,
Stu.
he is. He's having an affair with China. I didn't say anything
Oh,
bad.
okay.
You take a look at what he's doing. Follow the money. I don't know anything.
And what are you
Anyway,
up to, Stu? Come on. What are you up
Yeah,
to?
come on.
I've got
Come
about
on.
17 articles I'm working on. The number one problem I see in the United States is that people are not ready for the looming energy crises that is going to be rolling blackouts in the United States. And it's because we have too much wind and solar, and we have too much of non-rotating energy sources coming off of the grid, and it's a dynamic problem. We had over 300,000 people in Ohio without power the other day, just from normal storms.
Gary,
So I'm
Indiana
encouraged-
hasn't had power
Yeah.
for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, you sit back and they're finally back down to only 24,000 they're without power. So my advice to people, I interviewed the CEO of Jackery, and he was in China at their factory. And I highly recommend people look at different ways to ensure. I say on the Energy Newsbeat podcast, you can go to the energynewsbeat.com or energynewsbeat.co, and energy security starts at home, and energy dominance is displayed through your exports is a reality that people need to sit back and get security at your house.
Yep.
Plan on several months without power and see how that goes for you. You think you got a happy wife now? Try it with and she can't curl her hair. Holy smokes, it'd be ugly.
Well, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you have hair.
It's just naturally curly. I don't have to worry about it.
Some of us, I don't have to worry about a haircut. But anyway,
Yeah,
with
well,
that,
myself.
I absolutely love everybody's comments. And I want to ask this one, Dr. Nemeth?
Oh, yeah.
Did you
No, I
teach at
didn't.
the University of Maryland in
Mhm.
Germany?
No. I taught at a private university in Germany.
Oh, cool. All right. So with that, we had a lot of people, 645 people on my YouTube channel, but the outside YouTube channel is only showing like 3.
Yeah.
You got to love YouTube. They got some
Said
funny
too much
looking
about
numbers.
China, Stu.
All right. For that, next week.
Thanks,
hey,
everybody.
we send us notes, and we want to hear from you on what discussions are important to you. Either go to the Nemeth Report, comment on the nemeth-report.substack.com, or go to blackman.substack.com, or go to theenergynewsbeat.substack.com and let us know what you want to hear. Also, if you want to sponsor and get your great company out there, we can be bought. All right. Have fun, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.